Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Ali and let's talk about finance. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the difference between renting and owning. And the reason for this is because there's a misconception that owning is always better than renting, but that's not actually always the case. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do a comparison between renting and owning, and we're going to use the average numbers in Toronto because I'm based in Toronto. So if you're in Toronto or if you're in the Greater Toronto area, this is actually going to apply to you. So let's get started. So first, let's start by talking about the misconception of owning is always better than renting. Now, the one thing that people always tend to forget when it comes to owning a property is all of the additional expenses that come with owning a property that you don't have when you rent. Now, when mortgage interest rates were at sub 2%, it might have made sense to actually own a property rather than renting. But over the last few years, interest rates have been significantly higher. Even though they've come down in the last little while, they're still quite a bit higher than where they were just a few years ago. Now, what's happened in that time is interest rates have gone up, which means mortgages have become a lot more expensive, and rent prices have also gone up, but they have now gotten to a point where rent tends to be cheaper than a mortgage on a similar property. Now, I'm going to give you an example. Now, if we take a look at the average rent in Toronto, so this is as of December of 2024. They haven't come out with the January numbers yet. However, if we take a look at the numbers as of December, the average rent in Toronto is actually $2,632 a month. Now, the average property, and I'm not going to include townhomes or detached homes, single family homes. I'm only going to talk about condos because condos tend to be the entry point for a lot of people. The average sale price for a condo back in December was $647,200. Now, this is the average, and keep in mind, this is as prices are coming down. So this was lower than the previous month, and the same thing with rent. Rent was significantly more expensive in the previous months as well. So this is with both the sale price as well as rent prices coming down in this time. So by taking a look at these numbers, there's a couple of things that I want to bring to your attention. Now, of course, if you're looking to buy a place, you have to have a down payment. Now, the down payment isn't actually all being used towards the cost of the home. There's actually additional costs that come with purchasing a property. Now, a couple of those costs include land transfer tax. Now, here's the thing. If you're a first-time home buyer, you're gonna get a rebate on the land transfer tax. So in Toronto, not only is there a provincial land transfer tax, there's also the municipal land transfer tax. So you get twice the amount of land transfer tax just because you're based in Toronto. This won't apply to the cities outside of Toronto. I know that there are some that are looking to implement a municipal land transfer tax, but not all cities around Toronto actually have that. So this is something where it might be slightly different, but it's not really going to change anything when it comes to the numbers. It might change the amount that you need for the down payment, but that's about it. Now, since we're talking about the down payment for a property, let's take a look and see what the minimum down payment is needed to get that average $647,200 condo that we were talking about. Now, because the property value is over $500,000, then you need more than 5%. In this case, you actually need a minimum of 6.14% for the down payment for that condo, which in this case would be $39,720. Now, you also have to remember a couple other things. If your down payment is less than 20%, you always have to get mortgage default insurance. So this is an additional cost that comes with purchasing the property, and a lot of times that cost actually gets integrated into the mortgage itself. Now, let's say you're going to continue on with that minimum amount of 6.14%. You're actually going to need about $63,000 in order for you to actually close on the property. Now, there's a couple of things that this includes. The first thing that it's going to include is, of course, that down payment. So that minimum amount that we mentioned before. The other thing that it's going to include is the land transfer tax. Now, this is assuming you're not a first-time home buyer. If you're a first-time home buyer, then this actually drops to about $55,000 that you're going to need for that down payment. This also takes into account the sales tax on the mortgage insurance that I mentioned that you have to get. There's also lawyer closing costs. There's also appraisals, there's inspections. All of these costs, they all add up when you're buying a property. So if you're looking to purchase a property and you're looking to put down the minimum down payment, you're still gonna need anywhere between $55,000 to $63,000 to purchase that $647,000 condo. Now, once you've taken care of that, there are additional expenses that you have to think about. So of course, when you go to get the mortgage is gonna be the biggest expense that you're gonna have. Now, on top of the mortgage, there's gonna be additional costs. So things that you're gonna have to think about is property taxes, as well as condo fees, especially if you're looking to buy a condo. Now, if you're not looking to buy a condo, there may not necessarily be condo fees, but there are maintenance fees that you have to take into account, which usually end up being about the same, maybe a little bit less than the condo fees that a condo would charge. So with everything that we talked about, the mortgage in this situation would be $3,286. Property tax tends to be about 1% of the value of the property. So in this case, the average would be about $540 a month. Now, if we take a look at condo fees will differ depending on whether the building is newer or whether it's older. Typically, the older the property, the higher the condo fees. The newer the property, the lower the condo fees. Now in this case, I just assumed about $600 for condo fees because the condo fees in Toronto tend to be between 75 cents per square foot all the way up to $1 per square foot. So in this case, let's say the condo is about 600 to 700 square feet. It's not unusual to see condo fees for about $600 a month. So that actually brings the total to $4,426 a month just to service the cost of owning a property. That does not include all of the utilities and all of the other expenses that come with just everyday living. So let's compare this to renting. Renting was $2,632 on average a month. Now right away we can see the difference is $1,794 a month in comparison to just paying rent versus paying the mortgage, property tax, and condo fees that come with it. So right away we're seeing that there's a difference overall in the year of $21,528. Now, a lot of people, they have the argument that when you buy, every time you pay the mortgage, you're building equity. So that means that you own now a bigger portion of the condo, of the property, as you pay down the mortgage. Now, here's the thing that a lot of people tend to forget. When you're paying the mortgage, there's a small percentage of what's actually going towards the principal and a larger percentage that's going towards the interest, especially early on with the mortgage. Later on, it's a little bit different. But all of these mortgages are very much heavy front-loaded when it comes to the interest payments. So let me break this down for you. If we take a look at those mortgage payments for the first 5 years, in those 5 years, you'll pay a total of $197,143 towards the mortgage. Of that, only $82,849 is actually going towards the principal, and the remaining is going towards the interest. So $114,294 is going towards the interest. If we really take that into account, that means that your equity position of the property has grown by $82,000 in a span of 5 years. Now, if we compare renting versus owning, renting, you're paying a little under $1,800 less per month when it comes to the property. So the assumption is if you're debating between renting and owning, the difference in the cost of renting and owning, that is money that you will have extra if you're renting. So that $1,800 a month, if you multiply that over 5 years, that's actually gonna come to about $107,640 when it comes to the amount of extra money that you'll have versus if you were to have put it in the mortgage. So when you really put it into perspective, in the first 5 years of paying down the mortgage versus 5 years of renting, assuming the conditions stay the same, we're looking at a difference of just under $25,000 extra from the savings that you have when you rent versus when you own. And this is really where things start to get a little bit confusing. Now, of course, people will talk about, well, the value of the home will go up. Now, that might be true, but if you take a look at the last 3 years, property values have dropped quite a bit. Now, who knows how long it's going to take for the market to recover and actually get to a position where it grows. Now, let's say for example, it does grow. Let's say it grows 2, 3, 4, 5% per year. Whatever percent you want to use. Now, think about those savings that you have. Those savings you can actually invest. And when you invest that will also grow at a larger rate of return. In most cases, anywhere between 6 to 8%. Now, if you're being a little bit aggressive, you can potentially be at 10 to 12%. And this is really where the numbers really start to not make sense. Not only do you have more money when you're renting in this situation versus owning, you also have more flexibility. Now, the flexibility that you have is if you want to move, you can move. You're not bound by the property that you have. Another thing to remember is if you want to upgrade, then it's a lot easier to upgrade when you're renting versus when you're owning. And the reason for that is because, again, you don't have to worry about selling the property and then go buying and having to worry about that whole transaction all over again. It's one of those things. If you're worried about missing out on the market, I could tell you right now that now is actually a good time to be renting if you're thinking about owning, so then that way you can actually build out a little bit more of your savings so then you can actually own in the future. I don't think right now is the best time to own, especially in Toronto or the Greater Toronto area. It is one of those things that it may have made sense a few years ago, but with the way that with the situation, with the way that everything is, it just doesn't make sense. And I want to reiterate, in every single situation that I took a look at, whether you're putting down the bare minimum towards the down payment, or if you're putting 20% down, you still always end up on top when you compare the difference between owning and renting, at least in today's conditions. Now, of course, take this information and do your own research. It's important for you to look into this yourself. At the end of the day, renting is not always just throwing your money away. Sometimes it's a good position to be in while market conditions are not favorable. So there you have it, guys. Those are some really big differences and things to consider when it comes to renting versus owning, and how actually right now renting actually makes more sense versus owning in most situations. So if you guys like this video, please leave a like, and also if you have any questions, please leave those in the comments down below, and I'm more than happy to answer those questions. Also, please share this with your friends and family. If you learned something from this, I'm sure they will too. And at the end of the day, it helps me grow out this channel so that I could continue to make these videos and make this information readily available to people like yourself. As always, guys, stay safe, take care, and we'll see you guys in the next one.